Holocaust. Destruction or slaughter on a mass scale. Destruction resulting in the extensive loss of life. The word Holocaust is often associated with Jews in Nazi Germany.
Yes.
However, this barbaric act is something that the black man has experienced on multiple occasions during his time in the New World.
And continues to experience.
Indeed. Now, information about such is very hard to find. But it definitely happened.
Oh yes, it happened.
And this is the reason, well, one of the reasons why we're here, trying to uncover and expose such things.
Yes.
Now we have spoken about one of the Holocausts before.
Yes.
But one of the things regarding history, which is often put on the black man's head, is that a lot of his thoughts are mere paranoia.
Yes.
They're figments
of his imagination.
Indeed.
That his white brother is going to harm him in some way, in an ongoing manner.
And there is absolutely no reason for that. It's all in his head.
It's all in his head.
But like any human, which the black man is, those kind of thoughts are not going to come from nowhere.
Exactly.
And in terms of Holocaust, we're going to start with the Holocaust between 1640 and 1645.
Yes, all right.
So if you would care to elaborate, the floor is yours.
From the period of the original 13 colonies, when the experiment was clear to its European masters that it would not work as they had attempted to do by sending whites over to settle the land and to clear the land, it simply did not work. So their second plan went into play, and that was importing the massive amounts of African slaves and distributing throughout the New World. The colonies at the time had an order of 450,000 slaves, not all at one time, over a period of several years. All of the countries had such orders. But per size, the American colonies were one of the largest orders. Brazil had actually the largest order, but per size of the existing population. They ordered 450,000 more men than women. They were interested in clearing the land in the 13 colonies. Virginia, New Hampshire, New York, they were each one of the first colonies. And from 1640, that delivery began. We don't know how the colonies came up with the idea. However, they began to systematically disappear the black males.
Now, in the context of a Holocaust, we're not actually just talking about disappearing, putting in houses or anything like that.
Oh no. We say that in modern vocabulary because we were not there. We did not see it happen. We simply know that it happens by its result.
Right. But for all intents and purposes, there was a destruction.
A destruction of all the males.
Which left the females who were bred with the
white masters. And so there began the creation of the race, the North American race. So from the very beginning of the actual creation of the so-called modern America, there were no Africans anymore by that act. They were African Americans, mixed.
So we're saying that this current iteration of America was built on a Holocaust.
Was built on a Holocaust.
And not any Holocaust, the Holocaust of the black male.
Oh, particularly of the black male.
Following that, roughly in about 1712,
Something like
that, there was a second Holocaust.
Yes.
And a name which is often associated with this particular Holocaust is that of a Mr. Willie Lynch.
Yes, that's where we in North America get the term lynching.
Now, would you like to explain what lynching actually is?
Well, lynching is taking an individual or individuals, hanging them up, perhaps castrating them. Usually that was one of the...
And for those who don't know what castrating is?
It's like you take any animal, male animal, and you take his testicles.
Removing his balls.
Yes.
In other words.
For some reason, the white man has always been fascinated with the genitals of Africans and African Americans. So maybe it was an act of humiliation because the person is still alive.
So I'm assuming that's a very, very painful and dangerous.
Oh, it's reported to be without any kind of modern anesthetics. It's a terror on the individual and those watching it.
And there was often times when they would let them die through the balls bleeding out, but they would often use a hot iron
you sear the ends of the blood vessels so that bleeding is cut off.
Right. So they live, but they have no balls.
Yes.
No testes.
No testes. And then the next act is usually...
So hold on, there's more to this lynching.
Oh yes, the lynching process is not merely castrating an individual.
Okay.
The person, of course, has, from the beginning to the end of this, severely beaten. And then they're hung up. And not by the neck necessarily, because that's not the purpose to kill them. A fire is lit under the individual.
A fire is
fire.
Right. Now, does bonfire have any association with lynching, as far as you're aware?
Not as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
This is a fire that's meant to slowly burn and to bring as much pain to the person who is hung up over it as possible, but not to kill them over a short period of time.
But we are burning a human.
Oh yes, we're barbecuing a human.
Barbecuing a human, wow.
And in those times, the whole town or even the county would turn out. The lynched person would be held until everybody could assemble. This is you can go to the records in Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, any southern state where any of the lynching information has not been destroyed, and you can read about human lynching. In fact, the last human lynching occurred in Texas under the presidency of George W. Bush. It was a lynching. There are other types of lynching where there's a drawing and quartering, where you have the limbs, each limb attached to a horse.
So wait,
mule.
Can you just say the name of this particular type of lynching?
It's called drawing and quartering.
Drawing and quartering.
Remember, in lynching, of course, death occurs eventually, but it's maximum terrorism on the peoples that you're performing this act on. So you don't want the person to die right away.
Right, but you want others to see this, to
hear about it,
to send an unrelenting fear into the peoples.
Yes, it has nothing to do with what they have been purported to have done.
Right. And you said the last one was when?
Well, it was in this millennia under the presidency of George W. Bush.
Wow.
A young man was by people he knew, friends of his. The young white fellows were driving along in a pickup truck, and a person they knew was walking along the road, and they stopped and said, "Oh, hey, John, we're going to give you a ride." And apparently they were drunk or whatever, but what they did was tie a chain around his neck and drug him behind the pickup until his head separated from his body.
So we were saying not drug in terms of giving him a drug. They
dragged him behind the pickup truck, and it was for almost a mile.
And his head came off.
So the last lynching that we know about occurred fairly recently. So understand, it has not stopped yet.
So that was a recreation of this
drawing and quartering.
So they attach a horse to each of your limbs.
Yes.
And they pull the human apart.
They pull the limbs off.
But you don't necessarily die when this
happens. You don't necessarily die right away, because often where the limbs pop off, they are seared, so that the person doesn't bleed out right away. Now in that case, the person is can talk. And there are reports of this, a person talking, saying, "Tell my wife, tell my mother that I love her. I've done nothing wrong. Forgive those who have done this to me," before the person dies. So lynching is a horrific. What the Taliban do today is really nothing compared to what has happened in this country to the black man. And often you go to encyclopedic knowledge, and there is no clear definitions. There's certainly no definition of the acts, but we know that they happened.
Now, if somebody was to investigate for themselves, the information, as you say, is a little bit hazy. I just did a little search now, and there was words to the effect of Willie Lynch purportedly was the mastermind behind this. There was even questions about whether or not his name was even Willie Lynch. So this is the kind of disinformation that we're coming up against. However, there was a letter which basically outlines Willie Lynch's address to the slave owners in Virginia. Now, specifically the James River.
Yes.
Now again,
named after King James.
King James of England.
Of England.
And Willie Lynch was an Englishman as well.
Yes.
An English slave master based in the West Indies, and he was asked to come over to America and give this speech because his methods were so effective. So I'm going to attempt to read in the guise of Willie Lynch. Set circa 1712, the colony of Virginia. Greetings, gentlemen. I greet you here on the bank of the James River in the year of our Lord 1712. First, I shall thank you, the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia, for bringing me here. I am here to help you solve some of your problems with slaves. Your invitation reached me on my modest plantation in the West Indies, where I have experimented with some of the newest and still the oldest methods for control of slaves. Ancient Rome would envy us if my program was implemented. As our boat sailed south from the James River, named for our illustrious king, whose version of the Bible we cherish, I saw enough to know that your problem is not unique. While Rome used cords of wood as crosses for standing human bodies along its highways, it's in great number, you are here using the tree and the rope on occasions. I caught the whiff of a dead slave hanging from a tree a couple miles back. You are not only losing valuable stock by hangings, you are having uprisings. Slaves are running away. Your crops are often sometimes left in the field too long for maximum profit. You suffer occasional fires. Your animals are killed. Gentlemen, you know what your problems are. I do not need to elaborate. I'm not here to enumerate your problems. I am here to introduce you to a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling your black slaves. I guarantee every one of you, if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or overseer can use it. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. These methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple little list of differences and think about them. On top of my list is age, but it's only there because it starts with an A. The second is color or shade. There is intelligence, size, sex, sizes of plantations, status on plantations, attitude of the owners, whether the slave lives in the valley, on a hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair, coarse hair, or is tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I should assure you that distrust is stronger than trust, and envy stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. The black slaves, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-generating for hundreds of years and maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old black male versus the young black male. And the slaves and the light-skinned slaves versus the dark-skinned slaves. You must use the female versus the male. You must also have white servants and overseers distrust all blacks. But it is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us. Gentlemen, these kits are your keys to control. Use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss an opportunity. If used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's make a slave.
Wow.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Calvin.